The judge overseeing former President Trump's criminal hush money trial held Trump in criminal contempt, fined him $9,000 and warned him of potential jail time for violating a gag order. The gag order prohibits Trump from making public statements about witnesses and jurors concerning their potential participation in the criminal proceeding. Judge Juan Merchant found Trump violated the gag order 9 times, fining him $1,000 for each violation. The judge said he wouldn't tolerate further violations and would impose, quote, an incarceratory punishment if necessary.
Merchant also said Trump violated the order with social media posts about witnesses and comments he made concerning the jurors and ordered him to remove all of the posts by 2:15 p.m. on Tuesday. Trump's attorneys have previously argued that Trump is trying to carefully comply with the order, was only reposting articles from other sources, and that his comments were not focused on witness testimony. Some conservatives are growing frustrated with Judge Merchant. Conservative activist Jack Posobiec took to X to write, "Go ahead, arrest Trump, throw him behind bars, petty tyrant Juan Merchant, do it. Let's see what happens." And what would happen is that there would be rioting across the country. So I hope it does not come to that. Trump has to pay this fine for violating, according to the judge, the gag order in how he characterized the unfairness of the jurors who were selected, the unfairness of the judge. And so they said that that did violate the gag order. He says, well, he just shared what Jesse Waters said about them or what others said about them, and he's not giving specific information on them as some of the reporters have done.
I mean, this is not what happened, but let's just, for the sake of example, in a maximalist way, and then we can work our way back to what actually happened. If the rationale is, well, if I didn't say it, but I just retweeted somebody else say it, would I not be responsible if I were Donald Trump and I were on trial and someone else said, someone should murder jury number 3, and I just quote tweeted that? Wouldn't you say that I was responsible for that? That's tantamount to me saying someone should murder jury number 3.
I mean, no. If I was covering this as a reporter and I tweeted, someone had said murder juror number 3, I would be sharing the information that someone had said that. I wouldn't be guilty of making the threat, would I?
Great. So I was worried that starting in a maximalist position was going to be unfair to you because that's not, in fact, what happened. But given that you even agreed that that's appropriate, I'm glad we started there because, Robby, that it absolutely is not appropriate. If you're a journalist and you said, hey, look, this is something that someone said, and you add context in your quote tweet, making it clear that I'm not agreeing with this. I quote tweet things all the time that I don't agree with, and I offer commentary on it. Look at what this person says. Here's why it's wrong.
Which is why
this is unconscionable. I disagree with it. That's not what Donald Trump said. If you just quote tweet something without any commentary, that is an endorsement, an obvious endorsement.
Retweets are not endorsed. I mean, this is not what we're describing.
You're going with
that's a
retweets are not
endorsement.
No, people have to put that in their profile because of the clear understanding that retweets are endorsements.
I go down favoriting things all the time just so that I can find that link later, not because I necessarily agree with it, so that I can bring it up on the context of our show.
Do you quote tweet without comment statements that you don't agree with?
I've certainly done that before to share the news of the statement. I absolutely have.
I don't know. I had nothing else to say.
I quote tweeted Columbia's statement about the protesters to put it out there.
If you think it's appropriate,
but this is not really
for the president of the United States of America,
not whether
but
whether he's.
You walked yourself into this, Robby. Now there's nothing else to say.
What?
If you think it's appropriate and doesn't constitute
any kind
appropriate.
I'm saying, should he have the?
Is it violative of the rules against threatening witnesses that have resulted in this gag order?
I don't think it's threatening witnesses to say that the juror pool is unfair or the judge is unfair.
Right, but
that's an invention of the prosecutors who are out to get him.
That's why I started with a maximalist version of a quote. We're trying to isolate. I'm trying to isolate this idea of whether, I just quote tweeted it, is a good enough excuse before we move into the substance of what the tweets actually said. But you already seem to be of the position that no matter how violent and targeted you should kill juror number 3, the tweet is that Trump would be justified in quote and
No,
and
I don't think the
it.
things he tweeted were violent.
Well, no,
I think they were his view on whether it is fair, that whether the jurors are going to be fair to him and whether the judge is going to be fair for him. And he is running for president, and I would not hamstring his ability to complain about the process, given that he is running for president, and that is what I'm saying.
So let's get into some.
Everyone else can comment on the trial, just not Donald Trump.
he can comment on the trial. He's not allowed to talk about things that could be construed as threatening to witnesses or to opine on the witnesses specifically and directly.
We just did a whole show about how people's subjective feelings about what our things are threatening to them are not necessarily the standard we should all operate off of.
Okay. And I gave you an opportunity to ratchet back to something closer to what was actually said, and then we can have a debate about how threatening it was. But you already committed to the idea that you think Donald Trump would be justified in and should not be sanctioned for, should not be gagged from, quote, like retweeting a direct, violent threat. Someone killed juror number 3 against a juror. So I'm struggling. I don't think I have to keep talking. I think the point has kind of been made. Although let's keep going, because I think that many listeners would not agree with that position, but they still think that when you look at the fact of what Donald Trump actually said and did, it still doesn't rise to the level that should have justified.
You raised a ridiculous hypothetical, and
that you walked into
it. So
that you fully. I did not expect for you. I didn't ask you. I didn't.
I'm a free speech absolutist. I don't think he bears responsibility for that, and I would not put limits on his ability to run for president and describe the process and how it's being deployed against him and let people agree with it or disagree with it. The question for whether Donald Trump is the next president of the United States should be left to the American people, not 12 jurors in New York.
Let's see what the opinion says. Okay, so first they addressed the issue of reposts, which several of these things were. And so the court says the issue of reposting appears to be a question of first impression. This has never come before the court before, so let's go to common sense. It says both the Truth Social account and the official campaign website exclusively represent the opinions and views of the defendant, and neither is an open forum for others to post about their own content. It's all Trump's words. Okay, that's how Twitter works.
I'm going to your Twitter feed to retweet something you've said that I absolutely don't agree
okay.
with.
Defendant curated the post at issue and then took necessary steps to publish the post to his Truth Social account. So it's saying that this was purposeful, this isn't something that could happen by accident, this isn't somebody else tweeting on his behalf. And moreover, they quote Donald Trump as describing the value of Truth Social, saying, Truth Social is the primary way I get the word out. And for better or for worse, people want to hear what I have to say. That I have 7 million followers, like statements from Donald Trump talking about how he uses Truth Social, saying specifically, everyone seems to get whatever I have to say in quickly, basically telegraphing that this is how he communicates to a very large audience. And Trump knows what he's doing, is what the court is establishing. It then goes on to address some of the posts. It says, turning next to defendant's post in which he purports to quote Jesse Waters, Exhibit 10. This is not a repost, but rather the defendant's own words. Mr. Waters uttered a statement which defendant altered, placed in quotes, attributed to Mr. Waters and posted. The purpose being to call into question the legitimacy of the jury selection process in this case. This constitutes a clear violation of the expanded order and requires no further analysis. Yes. So the court is saying, first of all, it wasn't actually a repost. He put it in quotation marks, but it wasn't something that Jesse Waters had even said. And again, it's a statement that specifically goes to undermining the integrity of the jury process, which is a direct violation
Jesse
of the
Waters
order.
is mad that he was misquoted there. He can take it up with Donald Trump.
Well, that's not the issue. The issue is that Donald Trump can insulate himself for having responsibility for this by saying it's just a repost. If it wasn't in fact a repost,
the issue is
you're just artificially adding quotation marks around it.
If Donald Trump loses the election after they've jailed him for complaining about the process, half the country is going to reject the results of the election, and there's going to be widespread social unrest or mob violence, and that is not something I want to happen. And so I wish the people involved in bringing these allegations against Trump that run the gamut from kind of dubious, as in this case, to very serious, and maybe he should be found guilty, should consider what they're doing for the good of the country.
Let's see what the court has to say about the First Amendment concerns. It says, at the same time, this court is keenly aware of and protective of defendant's First Amendment rights, particularly given his candidacy for the office of President of the United States. It is critically important that the defendant's legitimate free speech rights not be curtailed, that he be able to fully campaign for the office which he seeks, and that he be able to respond and defend himself against political attacks. For that reason, this court exercised discretion when it crafted the expanded order and delayed issuing it until the eve of the trial. The order is narrowly tailored to prevent risk to the fair administration of justice, and it clearly and unambiguously identifies the limited way in which the defendant's speech is restricted.
Yes, that's their claim.
All right. I mean, look, if you want to pull up a specific post that you think has been unfairly gagged, unfairly penalized, then I'm willing to get into the meat of it and try to have a conversation about it. But this is not one of the situations where an ad hoc rule is used to catch somebody up. This is he was hit with this order. He was given a warning. He was told, do not make statements about the juries or the jury selection process. That is against the rules.
Yes.
And doing so, it's an easy trap for him to fall into. It's not a trap. It's just the rules of court that every other defendant before the court has to respect. Everybody else. And this feels like another instance where Donald Trump wants special rules for himself and different rules for the rest of the American public. This is how he had to pay that huge judgment in New York in the first instance. He thought that he could get away with saying that his apartment was 3 times larger than it was so that he could advantage himself financially on these financial disclosures, and the rest of the public.
No, that was
have to do
a
those
great
kinds
example of the law being wielded against him in a unique and unprecedented way because they
Robby.
never bring those charges.
You don't get to lie on financial documents and say, well, I should be able to get away with it because I happen to be running for president of the United States of America.
It was in fact standard practice. Multiple financial experts have been on TV saying that
it's normal to lie about the side of your.
Did the bank feel defrauded? Did they bring charges? No. In fact, they said they would happily loan him the money again.
Point.
They did not. It was the government's. It was a third-party subjective evaluation that they had been defrauded that none of them agreed with.
The square footage of your apartment is not subjective, Robby. It's math, and this is where Donald Trump is getting into trouble. There are more subjective.
There's a weaponized judicial system out to get him.
No, there are more subjective persecution arguments that you can make. Let's say about the choice to charge him over the documents case when Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and others had behaved very similarly. There are distinctions there that we've talked about at length, but I think there's firmer ground for Trump to stand on. But he is over and over again putting his supporters in a position where they're having to defend the silliest stuff in the world, including the idea that he should be allowed to target and harass members of the jury. And
harass by saying they're unfair, they're liberals, and they're out to get me? That's harassing them? I don't think that's harassing them. That's the root of our disagreement.
All right. It's the same thing that nobody is allowed to impugn juries like that. That's just not something that you're allowed to do. Because there have been too many jurors and too many mob cases and too many coercive death-resulting instances that have occurred in American history.
The only people I see inviting danger to the jurors are other members of the media describing in granular detail what they're like.
You can move the goalpost all you want. This is a conversation about what Donald Trump, the former president of the United States of America's abilities are to protect people who he hopes are his constituents again someday.
That does it for us for today. Tomorrow on Rising, we will be back here discussing more of the news.
Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any content. For those of you who like to listen when you're on the go, we're now available anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Bye-bye.
Take care.